She knows. Yeah. Well, it sounds like I'm on. Janet, we got a baby update? Any action? Still waiting. Okay. It's Sunday, right? 7:31. Yeah, but she's on the come in every 2 days, right? You know you're getting close when you're doing that. When they say, why don't you just stay here, then you know it's close. Yeah. And they live where? Ohio. Okay. So did we have 2 Ohio plates in the parking lot on Sunday? The other visitors that were sitting on the back were from Ohio as well. So near Lynette, where she grew up. Awesome. Well, a couple updates. I talked to Jim Herndon and also got some information from Sue. I think Sue's hip's still bothering her, so I don't think we'll probably see them tonight. Anne has fallen twice. She fell again just in the last few days back to the hospital. They now think it's a medication related thing. I think she has some stomach issues and was on medication that's causing the falling, maybe passing out. You have more?
Yeah, I forgot the names of the medications. Meloxicam was one of them. One of them was making her hallucinate.
Okay.
And the other gave her an ulcer. So,
Oh, the medication gave the ulcer. Okay, there you go.
both of those, I visited with her son.
I got you.
But she looks really good. She's on a liquid diet. She's talking, making complete sense. I saw Tina and Teddy were there.
Okay, good.
So they're still assessing her. She was up today walking around with the walker.
Okay, good.
The plan is that she's going to go to rehab as soon as they can, she's able to.
Yeah. Well, I talked to Jim about whether they might need some food or something. He didn't think right now. I think because Betty Lou's spending a lot of time down at the hospital. But if that changes, Sue will get something out in the bulletin. Any other updates that we need? And Clark, would you word a prayer for us tonight here in a minute? Wally. Yeah. Yeah, the Shields family. Yeah. See, that was an awkward pause. Held his hand out. We're trying to rebuild our relationship with our son. Yeah. Yeah. That's where I thought you were going, but the pause threw me a little bit too. Yeah. That's what you want. You want to be able to talk and try to engage however you can. So we'll continue to pray about that. And you guys here, what, another month? So how soon do you know where you're going next? I'm sorry. Well, you were in Memphis. That's not much different than Arkansas. So you know what you're getting in. Yeah, you know what you're getting yourself into. So, okay. I feel better. I did read an article this week. It was ranking the education by state. And where do you think Virginia rated as a state? It was above Arkansas. In fact, they had Virginia as number 4. I was shocked it was that high, but it must be all those rich counties near D.C. that are pulling everybody up.
Nothing to impress the rest of us so far.
Well, I just didn't expect it to be that high. But my daughter does live in New Mexico, and it was 51. So, but fortunately, well, I think they threw D.C. in as its own. I think the reason Virginia did as well as it did, they took D.C. out of the mix, which is appropriate. It's not part of the state, right? Oh yeah. The Texas was about 27, just below middle, but I thought that was interesting. So what do you think the number 1 state is? Right on. Massachusetts and Connecticut, New Jersey, and then Virginia. So all kind of right up here in this area. Interesting. Well, Clark, word of prayer and we'll get started.
Heavenly Father, holy is your name. We're thankful, Lord, that we are in good health and can be here, that you've given us your word to study. We pray for those who cannot be here, that you'll bless the Herman family, that you'll help Ann to be diagnosed and recovered, and that the family will be relieved of any stress, that you'll help Jim as he continues to heal his back. We pray, Lord, that you'll be with Janice Milholm, continue to strengthen her, help us to be kind to her, to keep in touch with her. We pray for the Chris Shields family in Illinois, that you will heal them and that you'll give them comfort and ease the pain, take away any anxiety in the family, Lord. We pray for the McNeil family, that relationships will be strengthened and healed, that you'll touch hearts and move everyone closer together, Lord. Tonight we pray that you'll help us to come closer to you in study of your word. In Christ's name.
Thanks, Clark. So we're going to back up a little bit. We're going to go back to that floating axe head. Because I need to apologize to you that I had the perfect story to illustrate what I was trying to say. I did not think about it, and then when we got in the car, Denise said, well, why didn't you do this story? I'm like, well, sure, that's obvious. I should have. So set it up, we're at camp. We swim in the lake at camp, and it may have even been Sunday, but surely was Monday. One of the adults jumped in the lake and came back up without his wedding ring. And yeah, does that happen to others?
We've got one somewhere off the family cabin.
Yeah. So you know what happened? Muddy bottom, and there were guys, there were teenage boys who at swim time, all they did was look for that ring. Because you know where the guy just came up, it's just right there. And the bad part was his wife was coming on Saturday. And so on Friday night, he had given up all hope. And you know, like on any camp, you got to make fun of stuff that happened for the week. So they started this skit about the whole incident, him jumping in, and he's sitting there thinking, great, now people are making fun of it. And the punchline of the skit, though, they reenacted what they did, and they dove down. The guy pulled it out of his pocket, put it on his hand, and said, and they found the ring. And this guy went bananas, right? And so I don't want us to miss that part of the story. These teenage boys who probably they don't really have connection other than that it was important to this guy, right? That they spent their whole week looking at it, they didn't just like find it immediately, oh great. They looked all week, even after the bearer of the ring had given up hope. Or I also thought about a time when I was asking at church, just inviting people to help with dry bones. Christmas, we did that a couple of years ago. And this guy brings me a check for $2,000. Because I'm getting like 10s and 20s. And I get this, I'm like, wow. So I called him up and I said, this is really great. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, well, it sounded really important to you. Okay? So that connection in that story is what I want to lean into. When stuff happens to somebody, we're connected, right? We're all in. We don't have to even know necessarily if we have the trust, we have the connection, what's going to be done with it. We just want to be part of that. We want to be in on that. So I had to back up and do those things. So we left last week. We're starting 2 Kings chapter 7. We left Samaria, the capital of Israel, in bad shape. They're surrounded by the Syrians. They're under siege, and remember they had real inflation that donkey had, and the bird poop thing that were going for high marks. But here's how chapter 7. Sometimes you get to a chapter break and you go, well, why did they put it there? Because, the people who did 2 Kings didn't put these chapters in there, right? That came a long time later just for a benefit to try to locate stuff. But sometimes I really like how they choose to break the chapter, because if you stop with chapter 6, it's doom and gloom. And so it's like kind of the TV show cliffhanger, the next episode or the next season, everything's answered. Chapter 7, verse 1. Elisha's word is, listen to the Lord's message. This is what the Lord has said. About this time tomorrow, a seah of finely milled flour will sell for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria. And we don't have to know what those exact measures are or what the shekel was exactly worth to get the context. Not very much. What is an exorbitant price today, tomorrow? This time tomorrow, it won't be. And that's kind of unbelievable. Look at verse 2. An officer who was the king's right-hand man responded to the prophet. So, he knows what's going on. He knows how bad and how there's no hope. Look, even if the Lord made it rain by opening holes in the sky, could this happen so soon? Now, he's not totally without faith, right? He said, okay, maybe it could happen. But how could it happen that quickly? How could it happen that soon? Right. How is that going to be possible? And we lose. That's a great point, Clark, because we lose sight of that, right? We just go to the grocery store. The closest we come is, the hurricane's coming, we go to the grocery store and the shelves are empty. Or maybe if you have a pandemic and there's no toilet paper or something. I don't know. But they get it. We're out and there's nothing coming. Look at Elisha's response. Look, you will see it happen with your own eyes, but you will not eat any of the food. Don't know all the reasons why, but he's going to pay for his unbelief, I guess you could say. Wally. Yeah. Right,
He questions them because he has no faith.
yeah.
And if he had, and you know, if he was a true believer in everything else, he'd believe what Elisha said, because Elisha's, you know, he himself has been an example.
And being the king's right-hand man, he would have insight to those happenings where everybody may not.
And he's done all these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
How much, you know, faith is trust, so how much trust should you have in Elisha? Because it's no longer some blind trust, I mean, it's
Right.
based on performance.
Trust doesn't have to be blind. In fact, so particularly, you know, I grew up being a youth minister. Kids don't have life experience where you can say, okay, it doesn't look good now, but let's see what happens, you know. And the phrase I started using was, we can't see around the corner, right? Corner blocks our view, but God can. You know, God knows what's around the corner, and just because we can't see it yet, it's not time to despair. It's not time to give up. It's not time to say it's over, we're finished, there's no way out. You hope by the time we're old, that's kind of our go-to, right? Man, this is bad. I don't know how it's going to work out, but let's just kind of watch and see.
I don't know if it's necessarily that he didn't have faith, as more so as the faith that he had was displaced.
Yeah.
I remember we did a study long ago that said, I don't have faith in faith. And that was the title of the book that we did this lesson. It's really, you gotta think about the faith and trust that these people have to have the beliefs that go against the truth that is.
Mm-hmm. It is hard when the facts present themselves not to believe in the facts, right? Yeah. 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 You certainly hope he would have more. Yeah. So verse 3, now 4 men with skin disease were sitting at the entrance of the city gate. So if everybody was suffering, what's the guys with the skin disease? What's their lot? Well, it's worse. You know, they're not the first in line, right? There's no handouts. They said to one another, why are you just sitting here waiting to die? If we go into the city, we'll die of starvation. If we stay here, we will die. So let's defect to the Syrian camp. If they spare us, hey, we live. And if they kill us, well, we were going to die anyway. You know, we haven't lost anything. This is our best chance. So there was this camp I used to go to at Lubbock Christian, and the youth minister tried to come up with classes that were very interactive. And so working with another gentleman one year, we came up with this whole kind of economy. So we divided the class into different groups, the green, the pink, and the yellow. The yellows we taped off with masking tape, an area on the floor, and that's what they had to set. No chairs, nothing. They had to set on the floor. We put one pitcher of Lubbock water. If you've never been to Lubbock, that's a bad thing. And a single cone cup. And there was like 30 of them in this little area. And the next people, they were the yellows. The pink, they had a rickety card table, generic soda, and generic cookies. But they each had their own little throwaway cup. So, you know, they had a little better. There were about 10 of them. And then at the green table, there were about 3 or 4, kind of depending on the exact number of the class. And they had, you know, designer cookies like Pepperidge Farm Milanos or whatever your little favorite thing was. They had sparkling beverage before what my granddaughters call fizzy water was popular, sparkling with something back then. And they had somebody waiting on them, pouring their drink, getting their... So you can see what's happening there. And the idea was they pull these cards and different things happen to them. We're playing these different rounds. And they didn't know this, but in the top group, the worst you could do was break even. So they're not going anywhere, right? In the middle group, it was 50-50, and in the lower group, it was 80% bad. And we had two other places in the room. One was called the dead zone. And you could go, if you ran out of money, you went to the dead zone, and we would get several over there every time. And then we had one other player, and we didn't call him this, but he was the Christian, and he could say things, or she could say things to try to get people to come over, right? But they were generic so that it wasn't just obvious. And there were a few people that would go over there. It was really interesting what happened. If they went from the pink group, they usually went over to be, and they found out they had won the game because you're not playing this other game. Because the person over there, the idiot, we made them wear a sign that said, "I'm an idiot." So one of the things they could say, "I'm an idiot, you can be an idiot too." Going out of Paul's, yeah, exactly. It was usually the friend that went. But out of the yellow group, we had some people go over because they said, just like these guys, it was like they were reading the story. People are dying all around me. What do I got to lose? Doesn't look like he's dying over there. So they went. We played that in the course of a week 15 times with 15 different groups of people. And so it was really interesting to see how it came out each time. Out of the 15 times, we only had one person out of the rich group go over there. Because, they were doing good. And the only one that went from the green group, the rich group, that went over there during the whole week said, "I just got tired of playing the game. It was so much math." Okay, great. She must not have been in Virginia schools, I guess. But we get this, right? Maybe we've even been where you're like, okay, we're going to take this wild shot because the alternatives are even worse, dying. So they have nothing to lose, so they start toward the Syrian camp at dusk. When they reached the edge of the Syrian camp, there was no one there. The Lord had caused the Syrian camp to hear the sound of chariots and horses and a large army. And so you know what happened. They got scared and they took off and they left everything behind. They think the Hittites and the Egyptians are coming and they're not prepared to fight them, and they just run. They panic so much they just leave stuff behind. Look at verse 8. When the men with a skin disease reached the edge of the camp, they entered a tent and had a meal. They also took some silver, gold clothes and went and hid it all. Yeah, I get that, sure. Then they went back and entered another tent. They looted it and went and hid what they had taken. Now, if you're familiar with this story, that you're probably like me, this next part's your favorite. Then they said to one another, "It's not right what we're doing." Now, our rules say it is right. Finders keepers, right?
You're a beggar, nobody's giving you anything, you can feel sorry for yourself, but nobody would give us any food if we were in their shoes.
Yeah, we can rationalize it. But here's the poorest people in the city who've had the least, who are now going, "Wait a minute, this isn't right." And I'm not saying being poor is virtuous, but I have witnessed this among those who have very little, sometimes are the quickest to share what they have. Not everybody, but that's certainly there. I was at the Caring Kitchen one night where we just fed people that wanted to come eat. And this mom and son who had nothing came up. And I thought they were going to ask for something because they had before. Can I have a ride home? Do you have $10? That kind of thing. And they said, we need some help. Okay. You see this guy over there? He has nothing. Is there any way you could help? Could we get him some things? So the people who have nothing were asking me to help the guy who they thought had nothing. It's not just what we have and then we're able to share. It's our whole posture and attitude, and I love this. What we're doing is not right. This is a day to celebrate, but we haven't told anyone. So sometimes I just like this to sit with that and think about that. If we wait until dawn, we'll be punished. So you know what they do? They go to the city. They went and they called out to the gatekeepers and tell them what happened. The gatekeeper passes it on. Look at verse 12. The king got up in the night and said to his advisors, I will tell you what the Syrians have done to us. You see it? When you're a trickster, when you're always leveraging stuff, even when good things are happening, what do you do sometimes? You're suspicious, you think it's a trick. They know we're starving. They left the camp. They hid in the field thinking when we come out of the city, we will capture them alive and enter the city. When you don't have faith in God, even when you're presented with a solution, you still don't have faith in God, right? You don't see it. You miss it. He still cannot, as Wally pointed out earlier, after all we've seen God do for this king, he still can't see God act. So he sends some man, just a few. Let's sacrifice a few. I'll show you. It's a trick. Let's just get your worst guys and send them out. Wouldn't that be the right way to do that? Yeah, that servant came up with that idea so he wouldn't have to be the one to go, right? He's quick on his feet. Let's send somebody out there. But they go out, they track them as far as the Jordan. The road is filled with clothes and equipment that the Syrians had discarded in haste. The scouts came back. Then the people went out and looted the Syrian camp. A seah of finely milled flour sold for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel, just as in the Lord's message. And just as he said, the king placed the officer who was his right-hand man at the city gate. When the people rush out, trampled. And so the sky can open up. And things can be different tomorrow. Wally, did you want to say something? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And don't don't be king if you're not going to act like king, right? Right. Right. Yeah. Well, we're quick to blame. Hey, we still have time left and we made it through a whole chapter. This is amazing. So let's see if we can do chapter 8. So the Shunammite woman, the one that Elisha brings his son back from the dead, she's advised by Elisha, why don't you get out of town because there's a famine coming. It doesn't appear to be this famine of Samaria because that wasn't really a famine, that was a siege. Yeah. So this is something different, but it's going to be 7 years, and so things aren't going to be good around here once you get out of town. Which is what happened with Elijah. There was a famine. He also left the country. Here's Elisha telling this woman she needs to leave, and she does that. And she lives among the Philistines for 7 years, and as the famine's easing back, she comes back. But what's happened while she's been gone? Yeah, but more than likely he's dead. He was old last time we talked to him. Nobody there. Well, somebody's going to move in and take over, right? If you and Janice move out, we're coming in, we're taking over your garden, right? That's just going to happen. Thank you for getting it started for us, right? So you understand that. So she goes to the king naturally and says, hey, I want my stuff back. And it just so happens, right, that Gehazi is talking to the king. So this is the same guy with Naaman. So several things could be going on. We don't know which one. Because, he was told he was going to have skin disease that Naaman had, right? So has he been healed? That's certainly possible. Or does the king just talk to him from a distance, right? Get close to the guy that's got the disease. Or another possibility is, remember, this is not a step-by-step historical recreation. This may be out of chronological order. This could be after Naaman, because that detail's not important. It's what's happening in this story that seems to be important. And when the king hears the story of what Elisha did, he says, I think that woman needs her land back. Well, he says, let's get this fixed. He ordered the eunuchs to take care of her request and ordered him give back everything she owns as well as the amount of crops her field produced from that day she left the land until now. Wally.
This is also, again, this is a big deal because Elijah before asked her, do you want me to appeal on your behalf to the king? And she said no. So this circumstance here is dire for her to go to the king.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, this circumstance is no good. So she was a woman, significant, prominent,
Yeah.
rich, wealthy, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. Here's what I want to bring into this. As hard a time as this king has trying to listen to Elisha, he shows some ability here. But even bigger than that, this seems to be opposite of what Ahab would have done. Right? Exactly, because he wanted it. I'm going to guess she had some prime real estate. It would have been easy to say, well, sorry, it's gone. In fact, it's mine now, perhaps. But I think let's not miss that. Elisha is making some difference, even if we can't get the king to come the whole way. he is having an impact. And if he's having an impact on the king, maybe he's having a bigger impact on others in the country. So verse 7, Elisha then traveled to Damascus. So he's not just prophet in Israel. He's going to a foreign capital because King Ben-Hadad of Syria was sick. The king was told, the prophet has come here. So we're not really told, but it kind of seems to me that maybe he was invited. Is that because stories of Naaman, just Elisha's reputation, here, this foreign king hearing everything Elisha has done? Absolutely. If my God's not getting it done, let's get somebody else in here, right? What I got to lose. Yeah. And also practice verse 8. Take a gift, right? If we give a big enough gift, maybe we can get a good enough word from this prophet. The question is, will I recover from this sickness? So Hazael went to visit Elisha. He took along a gift as well as 40 camel loads of fine things of Damascus. When he arrived, he stood before him and said, your son, notice that term of respect, right? What's the king saying? I'm below the prophet. I'm your son. King Hadad of Syria has sent me. Will I recover from this sickness? The king asked. Go and tell him, you will surely recover. But the Lord has revealed to me that he will surely die. Now, I don't think Elisha's saying he's telling him he's going to get better, but he's not going to get better. But just because he gets better doesn't mean he's out of this, I think is the force here. The prophet, let's don't miss this. Right at the end of 11, Elisha just stared at him until Hazael became uncomfortable. I think that's our clue, right? Yes, the king's going to get better, but he is going to die. I think he already knew what Hazael might have planned. Right, exactly, until he was uncomfortable. And Hazael's got to be going, okay, how does he know this, right? Then the prophet started crying. Hazael asked, why are you crying, my master? He replied, because I know the trouble you will cause the Israelites. You will set fire to their fortresses, kill their young men with the sword, smash their children to bits. Some other bad stuff there. We don't have to say out loud. Hazael said, how could your servant, who is insignificant as a dog, accomplish this great military victory? He's still trying to deflect it. In the Old Testament, when they use dog, that's kind of a reference of I don't have much significance. The Lord has revealed to me that you will be the king of Syria. He left Elisha and went to his master. Ben-Hadad asked him, what did Elisha tell you, Hazael? Hazael replied, he told me you will surely recover. The next day, Hazael took a piece of cloth, dipped it in water, spread it over Ben-Hadad's face until he died. Then he replaced him as king. I found this. There's an ancient Assyrian inscription called the Berlin inscription. And here's what it says about Hazael. Hazael, the son of nobody, seized the throne. That's the interpretation. So he's an usurper He's not in the line of the kings. And you wonder, I think this was going to happen. Did he move up his timeline when Elisha said, I know what's going to happen? Or could he just not wait for it to happen? Yeah. And so even if it's known, does it make it right? Violence begets more violence, right? So now we're going to pick up, let's just do a little bit more here. Now we're going to pick up with,
From the king line, Hazael had a son who became king after him, named Ben-Hadad. Not the same Ben. So just make up the killing of both of them, and they think you're son after him, or what?
and you kind of act like you're part of the lineage. Yeah. We've kind of left Judah. This whole last several weeks we've been in Israel. We're going to pick up back with Judah all the way back to 1 Kings 22. And again, it's a little confusing because the name Joram and Jehoram are used interchangeably. And one of them's in the north and one of them's in the south. And it just gets crazy. So we pay attention to who they're the son of. So it's, in verse 16, it says it's the 5th year in the reign of Israel's king Joram, son of Ahab. The son of Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, became king over Judah. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, let's just see. Let's just go a little bit further here. So Chronicles, because Chronicles is kind of paralleling this story, but particularly about Joram of Judah, it's really helpful to us. So if you flipped over to 2 Chronicles 21, verse 4, let's just take a peek, and then you tell me what you think about our southern Jehoram. It says, Jehoram took control of his father's kingdom and became powerful. Then he killed all his brothers as well as some of the officials of Israel. He was now we're back to Kings. He was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 8 years. And then I bolded this on my sheet in case you're wondering, is he going to be good king or bad king in the south? Because it can go either way. This is what it said. He followed in the footsteps of the kings of Israel. Just as Ahab's dynasty had done, for he married Ahab's daughter. In case you're not sure what the outcome is going to be, he did evil in the sight of the Lord. So I got lots of questions. Did you think this alliance was going to help you? Were you missing your cousins in the north? Are you not listening to the Lord? Which I think is probably high on the list, because why would you have to kill all your brothers to secure? He thinks politically, not theologically, not religiously. And I wonder, I'm just wondering, did Ahab's daughter, and her name's Athaliah, was she whispering in his ear? Did she learn from her mother, Jezebel? I think we're going to see that connection. But we're also told, verse 19, but the Lord was unwilling to destroy Judah. Even all of this has happened, even though they've made an alliance with the north, even though the house of Ahab has come into the southern kingdom. But the Lord was unwilling to destroy Judah. He preserved Judah for the sake of his servant David, to whom he had promised a perpetual dynasty. But then in verses 21, 22, he's not a very good king because they lose Edom immediately. Instead of this alliance making them stronger, it's made them weaker. And then we're said, aren't the rest of the stuff he did written down? And it is, but then we go back to 2 Chronicles, and that's where we'll pick up next week, because Chronicles tells us he got a letter from Elisha. So Elisha's not just talking to the northern kingdom, he's trying to help out the southern kingdom as well. We'll pick up there. 21. The letter starts in verse 12, and really down through 20 is going to be pertinent to what we're talking about. We get a little more detail that Kings kind of just leaves out part of it. Okay, glad you're here. Ready for your Sunday. Yeah, well, but I'm not leading the closing song this week.